And got it.
It would be a new vibe for me. I'm not against anything. I'd have to try it.
Okay, Roy, thank you for your patience. Lovely to see you. Look at that, happened. Really fantastic. Just a very quick introduction to Roy. I met Roy, gosh, I don't know, it was like a couple of years ago, Roy.
Yeah.
Podcasting, and it was huge fun. And he's just a fantastic guy, and he's been interviewing people about creativity. I'm going to give you a talk about creativity at 3 o'clock, which will be entirely different. So the two will complement each other brilliantly. But enjoy what Ray wants to tell us and can tell us about creative people, what drives them, how they become creative. Great to have you here, Roy. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Hello, people of the Royal College of Art in London. This is a real pleasure. So thanks for having me. What I'm going to do is I'll spend a little bit of time just going through my story and then handing it over for Q&A. So I am the founder and CEO of Unknown Origins, which is a creative design studio that provides creative strategy, brand creation, storytelling, and envisioning services for artists, entrepreneurs, educators, and businesses. And we're on a mission to save the world from unoriginality by unleashing creative power. And I'll explain exactly what I mean by that a little bit later as we go through the talk. Why did I do this? Why did I set up this studio? I did this because I tend to be compelled to do things instinctively, then work out why I did them later. But I believe that creativity, and I know it's a cliche, exists within everyone. And when you know how to unleash it by channeling your passion and energy, transcending the ordinary and routine into creating something new, you can move the world forward. Creativity is the ability to make the invisible visible by taking what is not to create what is. It manifests what's inside of you and around you, as I mentioned earlier about transcending the obvious, ordinary, and routine. It connects the past to the present by putting things together in new ways. Creativity is believing in yourself and your ideas, always moving forward and never giving up. True creatives are the outsiders looking in, the rebels with a cause. To be one, you must be comfortable taking a stand against oppressive forces and articulating your opinions and ideas without fear of retaliation. Creativity entails providing something new to the world and overturning the status quo by positively impacting people's lives and helping society advance by making life more purposeful, engaging, and fulfilling. It also means embracing originality and making unique connections between disparate universes, past and present, to light the way into the future. Many innovators are classic outsiders who disrupted, invented, and changed the faces of their industries forever. Andrew Carnegie, Walt Disney, Henry Ford, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Nikola Tesla, and the Wright brothers rose from obscurity to radically transform industry and how people lived. But this mantra is the same in other fields, not just business, such as how Elvis and the Beatles revolutionized how people listened to and made music. What Banksy has done in art, Muhammad Ali and George Best did in sport. None of these were created in the manufactured karaoke culture, pop idol or American Idol that we're all famous for. Creative leaders break the mold by making their own path to achieve mastery. They have confidence in their ideas and they never give up on bringing them to fruition. It means leading without frontiers by seeing around the corners and fearlessly navigating into the future. They are people of action who are always future-oriented, who start things, move the world forward, and inspire others to do it too by transforming society, business, and the arts. Often, by accident, disruption can have a domino effect outside the intentional target and area of expertise. For example, Apple's iTunes became a multimedia content and hardware synchronization management system and e-commerce platform. It was originally envisioned as a music player. it ended up disrupting the music industry by providing consumers with the ability to legally buy only the songs they wanted to hear at a significantly lower cost than other platforms. Another example is Coca-Cola, which was first invented by pharmacist John Steve Pemberton to cure headaches before becoming a household name. Sometimes the further you are from a problem, the more likely you will find a solution, because you can see the situation from a fresh perspective and often apply novel solutions to a disparate field. Overall, this transformation infuses imagination, taste, style, and inherent messiness with an inner desperation and persistence, along with a desire to succeed that results in having the skill and practical know-how. To be creative, you must swim courageously against the tide in search of the authentic and new, while staving off false promises of easy gratification and immediate success in a world saturated with consumer-led celebrity culture where everyone looks the same and everything is for sale. This is the reality. This is the reality in which we live, and it is counterintuitive to nurturing creativity. However, curiously, it is hardship, melancholy, and adversity that often inspire creativity. People who survive alienation, oppression, poverty, and other life challenges realize that it fuels their genius when they are able to focus it. And this primal desire to survive the odds with extraordinary intellectual ability, mental toughness, grit, and creative productivity is what fuels an insatiable drive for self-actualization. This in turn inspires creativity. So when you know how to channel your passion and energy into creativity and create meaningful outcomes, your outputs will be the next generation's inputs by helping light the way to the future and passing on the baton, leaving the world a better place. If you aspire to be as influential as the things that influence you, not to imitate them, but to influence others in your own unique creative way, you can recreate the world. Few movements survive long-term without embracing both radical and incremental innovation. Every successful artist, entrepreneur, and business needs to innovate continuously or risk being surpassed by the competition in the longer term. Radical innovation introduces a new business model and way of doing, where its invention dismantles and surpasses an existing business model and the status quo that surrounds it. In the business continuum, it typically equates to higher risks, but can offer higher returns. It requires the ability to envision and treat failure as a step forward, not a step backward or a reason to disengage. Startups are typically biased toward radical innovation by having significantly fewer constraints than larger organizations. They can afford to take greater risks, focus on the bigger picture, have more inspirational objectives, and be willing to experiment, reimagine, and design for the new, and having fewer inhibitors. Apple again experimented with the music application iTunes. It realized that there was no quality MP3 players in the market, so it created its own, the iPod. Eventually, it dematerialized its own technology by pivoting into another adjacent market, smartphones, with the iPhone. This led to Apple revolutionizing both the music and telecommunications industries, ultimately leading to reinventing itself from being a personal computing company to an all-encompassing consumer electronics, computer software, and online services global leader. Incremental innovation is small improvements made to an existing business model, product, service, or experience to achieve the desired business goal and differentiate from the competition by building on current value propositions and offerings to an existing and known market. Mature businesses tend to be biased toward innovating incrementally to maintain their existing customers' needs and to grow their customer base in a risk mitigated and tangible way. Typically characterized by narrower objectives and quantitative goals, they also take advantage of market research, focus groups, and prototyping. These large organizations focus on continuous improvement. They work toward defined milestones and rely upon internal sources of information to fill knowledge gaps. Companies like Coca-Cola and Disney have mastered the art and science of relevance and customer retention by incrementally innovating extensions to their product offerings through product enhancements, acquisition, or experiential or experimental branding. This has enabled them to stay relevant, tap into emerging trends, and continually bring something new to customers while remaining the market leaders. We all exist in time, a progression from the past into the future, moving in one direction, forward. Design influences society by communicating through visual, word, and sonic, changing opinions, instilling values, and translating experiences to people across space and time. It is an expression of the soul that experiences ideas and provides us with purpose and meaning. Design is a vehicle for time and social change that interconnects society, entertainment, politics, fashion, and technology, which translates into popular culture, practices, beliefs, and rituals prevalent in society at any given point in time. So what I've done here is I've painted a graph here from the last 70 years, from the beginning of rock and roll in the 1950s, right through to current date, in terms of the key characteristics from a society, politics, entertainment, fashion, and technological perspective. But rather than go through all of that, because we could speak the whole rest of the presentation, the talk around that, let me just focus on the 1970s as one example. A decade that saw rapid pace of societal change, egalitarian society, diversity, broad range in styles and tastes. Take society, for example, political and economic freedom for women and gay rights. Then the politics saw the rise of environmental movements, women's rights and gay rights. And Margaret Thatcher became the first woman Prime Minister for the UK, as did Maria de Lourdes Pinslagio for Portugal. In entertainment, there was diverse and stylized music genres, which became a norm. You know, you had disco, funk, glam rock, heavy metal, krautrock, new wave, progressive rock, synth pop, soul, and punk. You know, and numerous subcultures emerged throughout this period. So I mentioned punk there, which emerged in New York and London in the 1970s with anti-establishment and left-wing political views, promoting individual freedom and do-it-yourself ethics, centered on loud, aggressive rock music, who fashioned bondage trousers, chains, leather, metal spikes and studs, military-style boots, and torn clothing. And haircuts included spiked hair, Native American-inspired Mohican and Mohawk styles. And the point here is that the decade, that like time, all of those different components that contribute to, and not contribute, reflect time, are all interwoven through entertainment, through politics, through society, through technology and fashion. Creativity is a way of living, and set in the right conditions, atmosphere, and environment encourages creativity, art, and beauty that people adapt and react to and reflect in their life and work. Metropolises inspire creativity as a space for social integration, dreaming, making, and doing, where citizens can realize their full potential to live more enriched, fulfilled, and happy lives. Combined with the chemistry of individual human ingenuity, creative breakthroughs are a human process that happens when a diverse community of like-minded people come together. Societies are a catalyst for creating influential art and socio-cultural movements. This can be seen from the ancient Egyptian Memphis, classical Athens, and Renaissance Florence, to the French Revolution and Romanticism in Paris, to post-war New York and London. Historically, industrial cities like Detroit, Glasgow, and Manchester have an ingrained maker and doer ethos, and port towns such as Amsterdam, Copenhagen, Dublin, and Liverpool always had a constant exchange, diversity of people, and international trade. To modern day digital revolution, which was born in Silicon Valley within the San Francisco Bay Area, of California with its burgeoning startup and global technology innovation scene and its culture of openness and free exchange of ideas. Architecture, excuse me, I'm speaking really, maybe a little bit too quickly here, I'm drying up, so apologies for that. Architecture and design influence how people feel and connect. Then emotionally, that triggers the imagination. They speak a global language that everyone can understand regardless of their native language and cultural identity. They can affect how art is made and experienced, and they act as a catalyst for social integration and collaboration, empowering people with a sense of escapism, freedom, and hope to become self-actualized and live a fulfilled life. Look, if an image can say 1,000 words, then this one brings it to home about what the role of the artist really is in part. It's about taking a stand against oppressive forces without fear of retaliation, to embrace freedom of expression that moves things forward. Time, place, occasion. That's time, place, occasion. Music venues like the Cavern Club in Liverpool became an epicenter for Merseybeat in the 1960s. The Troubadour in Los Angeles for folk music in the 1960s and 1970s. CBGB in New York City and the 100 Club in London for punk in the 1970s. The Wigan Casino for Northern Soul in the 1970s. And in Manchester, the Hacienda nightclub for acid house, rave music, and the Madchester scene in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The point being, these venues became synonymous with the music they hosted, a sanctuary where music, fashion, and culture came together, where like-minded people could self-identify and feel liberated. Cultures are defined by the people who live and function within them. In the same demographic, for example, two cultures created simultaneously pursuing the same ideals will still become two very different entities. Why? Because people are different. When people come together in the service of something greater, they retain their own unique personalities, passions, hopes, and dreams. The shared experiences and constant interactions between people make up a culture. Culture is the engine that drives our momentum. It is the sum of what you feel, believe, and do that shapes and defines your work's input and your output. The principles for curating creative cultures are 5 things: leadership, do-it-yourself, craftsmanship, collaboration, and mentorship. Let me explain a little bit more about exactly what I mean by that. So let's take leadership first. Leading by action to find the future by breaking through the status quo is leadership. Leaders create clarity by synthesizing complex concepts. They generate energy by inspiring optimism, creativity, and growth. And they deliver success by driving innovation and being tenaciously pursuing the right outcomes. Do it yourself. This means rejecting conventions and originating new ideals. Do it yourself refers to the rebellious impetuosity of nonconformity with direct action and not selling out, doing it in your own style and pace. Embrace challenge, accept failure, persist in the face of setbacks, and learn by doing as the path to mastery. Craftsmanship, being passionately dedicated to your craft, evokes wonder and discovery. Remaining honest, trustworthy, and responsible by taking pride in everything you do helps you achieve the highest quality craft and professional excellence standards and levels. Collaboration. It is critical to collaborate when exploring new ideas, finding innovative solutions, and not being afraid to learn, and applying a growth mindset within that process as opposed to a fixed. Collaboration is the cross-pollination and sharing of knowledge across multiple domains by combining individuals' intellectual capital and know-how. And finally, mentorship. Stand on the shoulders of giants by seeking counsel from people you trust, respect, and admire. Find positive role models who can share their experiences, insights, and expertise to help nurture your ideas. Understand and respect history and infuse best practices into finding the future to truly innovate and to not reinvent the wheel. Every single creative will tell you that there is no on and off button for creativity. It is a constant that happens naturally by design or by accident in our everyday lives. Though the creative process may seem magical, especially where ideas can come from and how they are brought to form and life, there are proven techniques, tools, methods, frameworks, and approaches to the art and science of applied creativity that make it happen. What it does not mean is being fooled into believing that it is simply about following a process and expecting creative results as an outcome. It is all about people and the execution, because people with a vision combined with passion and drive make things happen. To pursue your idea with conviction and resilience, being skilled in your craft, and expedite with quality precision to bring your idea to life. Having true grit to slay the naysayers, push through adversity and ambiguity with leadership and drive, making sacrifices and executing your ideas in a disciplined way. Magic does take planning. The creative process is about making new connections between past and present ideas and infusing economic, political, socio-cultural, and technological perspectives in parallel to produce new business models, products, services, or experiences. The steps in the process involve discovering and developing insights, applying divergent thinking to analyze a problem, generating and evaluating ideas that can become concepts, experimenting, prototyping, constructing, and making a plan of action and then bringing it to form, bringing it to life. How do we find creativity? Do we simply dream up ideas within ourselves, what we manifest from what we observe and the world we live in? Or do ideas simply just fall from the sky and gravitate toward us? My approach is about blending the art and science of the creative process. Dream, make, and do. That's dream, make, and do. The process is iterative and constant, and the alchemy is in the execution of the process. It is customizable by craft, situation, and opportunity. So let me explain a little bit more about what I mean by those three steps to the creative process. Let's start with dream. Dream is about applying divergent thinking to dream without frontiers, to find the breakthrough ideas by envisioning the desired outcome. Make is about adopting a do-it-yourself sensibility and using convergent thinking to review and select the best ideas and then rapidly prototype and construct the plan to bring them to life. Then finally, do is where you're constantly reviewing the solution to identify improvements, to make eliminations, fine-tune, remove obstacles, mitigate risks, and bring it to life with your target audience and markets. Whether the solution is a new business, a brand campaign, a physical product, a service design, an industrial design, a song, film, story, or painting. As I was compiling my research into the creative process that I mentioned there, and also the book that I'll touch on a little bit later that I published recently, I interviewed many people from the creative industry across multiple fields and knowledge bases as part of that research, just so I could get a really rounded and eclectic view of how the creative process works and how it doesn't work, as well as infusing my own experiences and perspectives. And Clive himself did an inspirational one on observational research when he was involved in designing Terminal 5 at Heathrow Airport. But I'm sure Clive has articulated that to you already and you're aware of it. So let me give you another example of one of the other ones that was very enlightening within that research. And it was around empathy. in the creative process, and that came from the graphic designer Malcolm Garrett. And let me just reiterate, let me just quote what he said rather than trying to paraphrase and try and get it horribly wrong. So Malcolm's point was, the bottom line is empathy. I've come to understand that what I do is actually never really my work. If you are designing, you are by default trying to convey something for somebody else, to somebody else. By conveying the information that belongs to that environment, to the people that need to experience it. Communication just has to work without thought. For example, what do you see when you think about Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon? Light refracting from a triangular prism across a black background. That visual icon and the record, The Dark Side of the Moon, are inextricably linked and have thus become synonymous. And that's what a good designer does. They don't just draw a triangle with light rays that go through it. They create a sense of comprehension that transcends the imagery. Additionally to the creative process, I also established a creative excellence model that details the collection of skills and competencies. These comprise of 5 principles that define what creative leaders must know and practice, and that holistically address leadership at the individual, team, and organizational levels. There are 5 learning stages of creative leadership: fledgling, journeyman, and the man in that is part of human, not man or woman; expert, human, and artist. There are also 4 distinct behaviors: knowledge and skill clusters, which are leadership, aesthetics and identity, industry and cultural insights, and craftsmanship. These make use of 3 proficiencies: discovery, invention, and innovation. The 5 stages are fledgling, so you're acquiring knowledge and know-how. Journeyman, you're applying insight and contributing independently. Expert, you're guiding through domain expertise. Innovator, you're innovating through breakthrough execution. And finally, artist, you're leading through artistry and personal mastery. Many influential artists, designers, musicians, filmmakers, actors, writers, poets, entrepreneurs, industrialists, and technologists started as imitators of their craft's current greats. Still, once they found their voice and sound, they became unstoppable in their own right. They are innovators who broke the bonds of their era to create high art. And their own original experience cultivated a movement for change. Take the Beatles, for example. They started off imitating American gospel, R&B, rockabilly, and early rock and roll as fledglings. Their music dealt with love songs and teen relationships, which was the standard fare of the day. They became journeymen until they mastered their technical expertise as musicians and songwriting experts. Similarly to artists, just like Banksy, Dali, Matisse, Michelangelo, Picasso, and Andy Warhol, who started off as imitators of the masters of that time to learn and develop their craft until they found their own style. So about halfway through their duration, the Beatles I'm referring to here found their authentic voice and style and produced lyrics and music about everyday life and observations in their native Liverpudlian accents. Ultimately, they became artists who revolutionized how music was made and acted as a catalyst and soundtrack for social justice movements. Albums such as Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band provided one of the most potent musical cornerstones to the now legendary Summer of Love. The Beatles have maintained a canonized status unprecedented for musicians to date. My point through all of this as well is that expertise is not enough to change the world in any field and discipline. Innovation and artistry require the ability to transcend time and create a culture and movement manifested through your own unique identity, aesthetics, and the world around you. So bringing bringing this all together into a manifesto for creating without frontiers. There's 5 key principles here in that manifesto. Number 1, knowing that ridicule is nothing to be scared of. If your efforts are met with ridicule, all you have to do is find your inner conviction that you are doing the right thing, navigating toward invisible horizons by anticipating future trends, inspired by culture and aesthetics to drive sustained discovery, invention, and innovation. It's a sure sign that what you do is bold and innovative if you're dancing to your own drumbeat. Pay no mind to ridicule. Number 2, never be another brick in the wall. Dream, make, and do. Be in the moment, push forward for the greater good with true grit. Conformity never leads to progress. If you have something authentically different to offer, you'll excite and inspire others and ultimately thrive by lighting the way to the future. Number 3, lead without frontiers. Fearlessly lead by example and win the crowd by navigating territory where no one else has ventured. Avoid the mainstream and work to develop a deeper relationship between yourself and your audience. Be authentic, live in the moment with conviction and confidence, and always stay true to yourself. Number 4, provoke actions that change minds. Reject conventions, constantly analyze and question and challenge the status quo in your everyday life. Provide an alternative and bring it to life. People who achieve greatness do not fit a formula or follow a structure. They break the mold by following their own path. And finally, number 5, keep true to the dreams of your youth and create outside the boundaries. As we all know, Pablo Picasso believed all children are artists, but they lose their creativity when they grow up. Grow into, not out of, creativity. Don't give up the dreams of your childhood and your approach to the world through a child's eyes. Learn, innovate, and never waste a second on anything that seems to restrict you. Pulling this all together in summary, don't let the future leave you behind. Follow your heart and do what you love by falling in love with your craft. Pursue it with intensity and be exceptional at it. Everything you need truly is inside of you. Free yourself from others' expectations and walk away from the games and boundaries they impose upon you. Only you know your true worth. Realizing your full potential to live a fulfilled life means unlocking and applying your creative potential to do and excel at what you love. Remember, our outputs are the next generation's inputs, and that comes with accountability and responsibility to pass the baton to the next generation by leaving the world in better shape than you found it. So make it count. It is all about attitude, imagination, and execution. To learn more about why creativity is a critical differentiator and how to create without frontiers in the products, services, and experiences you make and the organizations you will end up running, by doing things with original and often groundbreaking perspectives that rejects convention and challenges the status quo by continually analyzing and questioning, one can lead creatively and provoke actions that bring about meaningful changes. And that's primarily about what my book, Creativity Without Frontiers, How to Make the Invisible Visible by Lighting the Way into the Future, is about. It's available on all retail platforms, including Amazon, where it is available on print, digital, and audio. And as Clive mentioned at the beginning, we also run a podcast series, which is about facilitating inspirational conversations across the global creative industry, from pop culture, design, architecture, music, art, film, fashion, and entrepreneurship. And there's also a thought leadership series that we run that provides influential perspectives about creativity, innovation, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Thank you very much for listening to me. Any thoughts, any questions?
Hi, thank you so much. I guess more than a question, it's a provocation, or I'd like your thought on type situation. But going back on your example, on your first example of iTunes, on how, it decoupled the single from the album and allowed people to kind of buy it, supposedly driving convenience and, greater choice, and everyone's happy. But at the same time, what it did is it destroyed, the album format, an experience in itself, and, something which was very important also to record shops, whatever. The whole kind of music world shifted, and not necessarily for the better in all directions. So I guess my point is coming to an industry from a fresh perspective always beneficial, or are you just kind of being ignorant of tacit knowledge and kind of unspoken dynamics within that? And if that is the case, what are your recommendations on how to kind of best avoid destroying whole industries?
100%. And that is such a mindful and deeply personal point to myself, because that was about business disruption, business innovation. And although it's been incredibly convenient, it's definitely removed that emotional connection and spiritual feeling of what it was like to grow up in the 1980s, 1990s, like myself, where going to a record store on a Saturday and making that pilgrimage to do so was almost like a religious experience, where you would kind of go in there and you'd surf through all of the latest albums and backlogs, and you'd grew the vinyl, and the smell of that vinyl just evoked you into this other imaginary kind of place of romance almost. And then going through the sleeve, which was just as artistic as the music itself, right, without sounding ridiculous. And you'd go through the inlay card and the lyrics, where the record was produced, who was it produced for, who was the guest musicians on it, all of that. That was an incredible experience, right? And that has not been substituted or elevated at all by that disruption. And I think, to answer your question, it is finding that right balance around ethics, maintaining something that's valued and treasured, without disrupting something that takes that away and crushes it by pure capitalism and money. But it is a trade-off, and it's fantastic to see as well that the vinyl, it's not revolution, but vinyl has had a rebirth as well, and it continues to live on and gain popularity. But I completely get your point there. And it is about that balanced approach, and it is about taking more of back to the Malcolm's point around empathy, around having a social conscience as well, around, look, this might be disruptive from a business perspective, but what's going to be the societal impact around driving that innovation, and to take all of those factors into place, not just the economics of things, but the socio-cultural, the politics. How do people feel? How's it going to impact the people that treasure the traditions and the way things currently are? That's a great point.
Thank you.
Somebody else?
I have a question. You mentioned Disney. I can't remember the second company, that they're really good at doing small innovations, essentially to keep their customer base kind of involved and caring about it. My question is, how do you call the shot when it's how innovative you must go? Because, there is the fear you go too innovative, though it may provide a more incredible experience, people may not be ready for it. How do you determine what limit people are willing to push beyond what they know?
Yeah, it's great points, right? So usually with great companies like Disney, the biggest innovation usually happens at the beginning, a little bit like Ford, and I'll pull this back, like when Ford, they didn't invent the car, but they invented the system, the manufacturing system that was able to scale the production of cars and then make that affordable for the majority of the Western world. But that, if you look at that, that's probably their greatest innovation. And then they've just incremented on that throughout time, right? Now, when you look at companies when they start off, like, they don't have the same barriers as to when you become like a scalable kind of business, where other factors kind of come into the equation, like regulation, like meeting quarterly Wall Street reporting, things. All of that can stifle disruption, and it then forces organizations that become more mature and more successful to be more disciplined around how they balance radical and incremental innovation. And so what you typically find is when larger organizations want to disrupt beyond their status quo, beyond their current business model. They will either do like spin-off white label kind of businesses and experiment and fail fast through that approach, or they might do it through acquisition of startups or other companies that can add a new capability that they might don't have, or help them innovate in a new market. But it really is about balance, you know. But I think as well, and I think what Disney are very good at as well, is they've stuck to their principles as well and been driven by those principles and values. Been extraordinary around experiential innovations in a physical setting.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's a great question again.
Just checking on the chat. Do we have anything there? Can you see the chat, Roy?
Let me just see this. Sorry, let me open this up.
Have a look there, see if there's any questions. We got Alex has asked, can you recommend any experiential innovations around time and occupying time?
Wow, you know, like that's a brilliant question. Can you recommend any experiential innovations around time? Nothing that truly comes to mind at all. Did you have a perspective around the questioning, Alex?
He's feeling bashful.
I mean, the first, without sounding ridiculous, the first thing that I reacted to when I saw that was, my goodness, wouldn't it be incredible if someone created a time machine without sounding ridiculous? But what was your intent behind the question? And maybe I can answer it more specifically.
Yeah. Sorry to ask such a vague question. It's mainly the question is mainly around how to shape people and how to because you've spoken to so many innovators, you have much experience in your own practice, whether you come across any strategies of how people can basically shape an experience of time. So, for example, in lifts, you have kind of mirrors that distract people while they're waiting, or in airports, you spend most of your time to occupy time. At the moment, we're doing a project on electric vehicle charging. Just wondering if you have any particular experience on that. It is a really vague question.
You disrupted my wavelengths there. So I haven't came across anything that I would say is meaningful and influential around that. So no, you've got something there from my perspective. So and I'm not going to waffle through pretending that I know anything, but no, nothing significant that comes to mind around that. So there you go. If there's such an entry point to go forth and multiply, that's it.
Right, they've all gone quiet on you, unless there's anything else in the chat. You can see it there. I'd like to know who is the most surprising and interesting person you spoke to, who kind of gave you an epiphany that changed or really impressed you. I'd like to hear more about the people you've spoken to. Apart from me, I was boring.
Oh, you apart from yourself, Clive, your one really did. I for all the things that you've done, Clive, I expected you to say other things, but the one around Heathrow was a really nice surprise and phenomenal. How a classic example of the outsider in perspective. But to answer your question, I think there was many great ones that took me aback, but the one that I think really stuck with me, right, was a few years ago. I was involved in producing a short video documentary with Johnny Marr, the musician. And we spent 2 days in his studio in Manchester making that documentary with him. And it was all around creativity in the digital age. And what it did was it looked from his perspective, the pre-digital revolution, and then like being a musician and artist, but before digital really took off, then going through digital transformation, going through that whole change and what it meant to him, and then post, what's his vision for the future. And the biggest thing with him, he brought it down so simply, and what inspires his creativity is he feels that it's like again, it's quoting Picasso, right? That inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. So when he's working, he feels that he can manifest a situation, that ideas just comes to him through practice, through doing, through constant iteration, and also the importance of to remain relevant within an industry, within a genre. When those ideas start to dry up or you start to diminish within your market, you then look at ways where you can collaborate with others, and mostly people from disparate fields. And it's not about changing yourself to follow fashion at all. It's about retaining your values and being true to your taste and style and being authentic within that. But looking for those nuggets that's out there that can add to your creative pursuits so that you can then internalize them, and that then continues to become part of your sound, your style, and so forth. But with him, that really surprised me around it was just that simple, was that it's about, you know, doing the work. It's about, you know, working, and the more work that you can do, the higher probability you have of finding breakthrough ideas, optimizing your creativity.
I really like that a lot, Roy, and it's a perfect segue to my talk at 3 o'clock this afternoon on creativity. So thank you for advertising that so well. I do think people don't understand that creativity takes hard work, and more ideas is better. It's often counterintuitive to how people see creativity as a moment of divine inspiration on a mountaintop with misty clouds all around you, you know. But it can just be really, really hard work. So brilliant. I don't know if we got any more questions. Have we got anything on the chat? Oh, we've got a few. We've got some video gamers talking rubbish on the chat. Not interested in that at all. Monica, did you want to ask your question?
Sure. Gosh, it's been incredible to listen to you, Roy. I've just been like a sponge right now. It's been really wonderful to hear your thoughts. On slide 14, you had one little section that mentioned business, product, service, and experience. And I wondered if you saw these 4 elements as a progression of the offering to market right now, or can service product exist anymore without an experience built into it? Is an experience necessary for something to be competitive or change-worthy going forward? Is that something that needs to be considered in the solution?
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? I think, especially coming from a technology environment over the last decade, I would say that I've been subdued to working with an environment where technology is the answer to world problems. And as we know, it absolutely is not, right? And what I think, and it's about people, it's about how can you make people's lives better? How can you, and by doing that, how do you progress society? And so experience is critical within that. How do you make people feel when they interact with your business, with your product, with your service, right? That's critical. But also, I'm really fed up and bored of listening to solutions. People talk about solutions where they're using things like artificial intelligence and technology to basically replicate what humans do and then basically ultimately replace them in terms of what they do. I get there's benefits in that if it means doing things in an ethical way where it's helping free up people to be more productive and more creative at what they're kind of doing. But I want to start seeing innovations come through that use technology in a way that does things that humans can't do. For example, I'll use Ford again, right? The car, when that was invented, that was an invention that people couldn't do, right? The Wright brothers, when they invented aviation, that's an invention that people can't do, and it significantly benefits, or it has done, society. And I know there's challenges there around climate and all of that, which I get and respect, right? But at its essence, both of those missions was all about improving society, improving people's lives, right? And take things to the next level. It wasn't about replacing people. So that's what I'd like to start seeing more of. And so experience is absolutely critical within that. And I don't see how you can you can run a business successfully and create meaningful products and services that do not have positive experiences upon humanity. So it's a great question. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Well, we're nearly up on time. So unless you have anything else to say or any more chats or anyone else wants to jump in and tell us what they think about creativity, it's been great to have you join us, Roy. It's been really, really lovely. Lovely to kind of see you, whereas before it was all on audio.
It was, yes.
And this fantastic set of podcasts, I'm going to go and listen to the Johnny Marr one, called Take Your Recommendation. And I think it's
thanks so much for your kind words. The Johnny Marr one was an actual video piece. So what I'll do is I'll send you through the link for that. And feel free to share it. But thank you so much for your kind words and for having me. And what a powerful bunch of people you have here. Fantastic questions. And I look forward to seeing all the amazing creative inventions that you all end up pursuing when you graduate from the Royal College of Art. I mean, you know, I'm really optimistic about what the future has now after engaging with you. And that question about time is really bugging me now. So I'm gonna have to do something about that.
If I've got any thoughts, I'll send you a line.
Please do.
Right, Roy, that's fantastically received. You're getting some lovely comments in the chat. I think it's really reverberated round here. Creativity is frankly something we spend far too little time doing, I believe. I think anything that nurtures and energizes our creative, you know, there's a lot of problems in the world right now, let's face it. So let's get creative on the week of COP26. But thank you so much. Round of applause for Roy, please.
Thank you.
It's a sound you don't hear very often anymore, isn't it? But I'm glad we're here to give you a round of applause. Thanks very much. And listen, Roy, we'll speak again very shortly, I'm sure.
Look forward to it, Clive. All the very best. And thank you so much again. Take care.
Great. Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, well, thanks everybody on the call. We're turning off our screen now and see you at 3 o'clock for my